morning, everyone, and welcome to Cabinet on Thursday, 25th of April. First item on the agenda, apologies, everyone is here. Second point is any declarations of interest? None. So if we move on to the third item on the agenda, which is East Renfrewshire British Sign Language Plan 2430, and this report will be given by Julie. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you, Leader. So today I am presenting the East Renfrewshire British Sign Language Plan for 2024 to 2030 to seek approval for its publication. The Scottish Government published the second BSL National Plan from 2023 to 2029 on the 6th of November. The BSL Act requires listed authorities to publish their authority plans in line with the national plan within 6 months after its publication, which means that we need to go to publication by the 6th of May. With support from the British Deaf Association, we have been working with a group of 8 people from the deaf community for the past year to look at developing and co-producing our plan together. And along with education colleagues, we've worked with a number of deaf children, their teachers and parents on what they think is important to include in the plan. This has been a very collaborative process, with BSL users being at the very heart of co-producing the plan. So for most of the priorities under the plan, of which there are 10, there was specific consultation sessions with our community group to understand BSL community experiences of each topic and hear suggestions about the actions we needed to include. We've also worked across departments, as this is an interdepartmental plan, and they have also been meeting with members of the deaf community to look at core areas of work and improvement that we could do as a council. So, for example, our digital customer experience team has been looking at improvements that could be made to our website. The British Deaf Association have also offered us direction and support on the content of the content of the report, and there has been interdepartmental working group to develop the plan. So we must thank BDA for their support with that. The NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde are also updating their plan at the same time, and we've been working closely with colleagues from there to ensure that our plans align, particularly around the areas of health and well-being. So you'll see in the plan, the whole plan is shaped around 10 priorities, which include delivery of the plan, accessibility, children, young people and their families, access to employment, health and well-being, celebrating BSL culture, BSL data, transport, access to justice and democratic participation. The plan must be translated into BSL on its publication to give equal weight to both English and BSL. Within the plan, what you'll see the structure is an introduction and background. There's context about how we consulted on the plan and the process of this. We've looked at our achievements to date in terms of the previous plan and what we've acted on. And then, as I said, we have developed under the 10 priorities key things around what we aim to do and how this will be delivered. Just to highlight some of the successes that have happened in our through the previous BSL plan, we've delivered deaf awareness training, and this has been co-delivered by somebody with lived experience to over 60 members of staff and our partners in the third sector. East Renfrewshire Culture and Leisure Trust has offered BSL interpreted events to support community engagement and participation in culture, including Remembering Together Community COVID Memorial and the development of their cultural strategy. They've also developed Creative Scotland funded storytelling with BSL, Theatre for Young People, and our schools have been engaging in learning some very basic BSL, such as signing a song and fingerspelling names, and learning the days of the week. Though it's not included in the current plan, what we've also just done is published a number of BSL translated videos on the website, including a dedicated page for BSL users. So today, Cabinet is asked to comment on and improve the British Sign Language Plan for East Renfrewshire for 2024 to 2030 prior to its publication in May. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. I know Councillor Pragno wants to come in. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie, for this report, and also I know Megan was involved in creating the report as well, so thank you to her. It's great to see that this report is and strategy is co-produced with the BSL community and those who are deaf. I agree, it mentions in the strategy that the group should continue to meet twice a year. I wholeheartedly agree with this. I just also want to pay tribute to Yvonne Wiley, who I know has been involved in this strategy, and our late husband Michael, who have been instrumental in East Renfrewshire for raising awareness about BSL, and actually I've known them my whole life, but actually kind of raising awareness in schools when it wasn't actually, many people didn't really understand what BSL was. I've just got a few questions. How many interpreters do we have in East Ren? I presume if they're needed it's an agency. And also when meetings of council and all council meetings and committees are uploaded to YouTube, there is the option for subtitles. But is this an option in the live stream of all council meetings?
So currently you're right, Councillor Pragnell, what we would do is go through a number of different suppliers and agencies to access BSL interpreters for our meetings. There are no particular interpreters within the council, although we do have council employees that we work really closely with and who've helped us shape the policy and also have delivered some awareness sessions. One of the challenges across the board is access to translators. There is often waiting lists and demands, and in particular even for the publication of this plan, we're going to have to turn around that quite quickly at the same time as other local authorities to get the translation done. So it's probably one of the broader challenges is around access to BSL interpreters. And I'll pass to Jamie for the second question.
Hi, Councillor Panglow, thanks for that. I think there are some practicalities around having a BSL interpreter linked to the live stream. So while it's always something that we would be mindful of in the future, currently the sense is that the logistics of doing that would just be too challenging, and actually the availability of interpreters and just the complexity and cost, I think, is associated with securing that resource on an ongoing basis would be quite challenging. But it is something that we'll keep a watching brief around, and should that change in the future, we'll respond accordingly.
And just to clarify, it's the pre-recorded versions do have subtitles, and it's the live stream only where we've got concern. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Anderson.
Well, Councillor Pragnell's actually just made some comments that I was also going to make, but so I also want to welcome it in the collaboration and the work that with the trust, the schools, etc. Very grateful to see that. And previously, I remember talking to Louise in business operations about the whole council thing as well. So the awareness, we're aware of the issues, but if focus on it would be very helpful. But I'm also thinking about the forum next week and at events like that. And again, it's including it in that kind of event. Also, it's the Equalities Forum, so it's just establishing it as the norm, so that the participative for any community, that's a key thing. So very good to see that small group of people, and to engage and nurture that and develop it further would be very good. I think you would agree, Julie. Yeah.
Just to follow up on that point, Julie, have members of the community been invited to the Equalities event?
They have 5 members that are coming along, and we have a BSL interpreter booked, which is great to get it on that day for that time. But they will be very encouraged to be active members of the Equality Forum going forward.
Great, looking forward to meeting.
Thank you very much for that. So, unless there are any other questions, are we happy to agree the recommendations in this report? Agreed. So, thank you very much. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is item number 4, Property Asset Management Plan 24-26, and this is a report by the Director of Environment, and this will be taken by Alistair Ross. Thank you, Alistair.
Thank you, Leader. I'm presenting this morning the updated asset management plan in relation to the time frame from 2024 to 26. This plan has been updated to fit into the hierarchy of the Council's corporate asset management plan, and aligns with the whole suite of asset management plans across the Council. and it outlines the work being undertaken by the Council in relation to the management of its operational built assets. The PAMP acknowledges that managing property assets effectively is a key driver of service transformation, and that properties are at the centre of a community's perception of the Council, and it also sets out the Council's approach to how we actually manage our non-domestic assets across this period. The PAMP sets out a clear vision for how the Council wants to manage and provide its buildings to ensure that they are well maintained, they're fit for purpose, suitable for their needs, they comply with legislation. We take cognisance of the energy efficiency nature of what we're trying to do under the climate change agenda to make sure that the buildings are energy efficient and and efficiently maintained, and that what we do in managing our assets can help drive towards achieving zero emissions and decarbonisation across our whole estate. In doing that, though, the PAMP does identify a number of key challenges, and many of the properties that we currently have are older, they're not designed for modern needs or for the changing requirements for service delivery or even from customers. Properties aren't energy efficient in the whole, but the recent increase in utility costs as well has meant that all our properties become more expensive to run, more expensive to heat and light, and also to maintain. We also have, in common with a lot of other local authorities, a maintenance backlog that is largely through the limited and reducing funding availability that we find that is happening at the moment. But also there's a limited and reduced availability of people resources as well, all of which combines to present challenges to the effective management and maintenance of the properties. Data on our buildings needs to be up to date in order to let us make evidence-led and informed decisions on what assets we need for service delivery. And also the key challenge, both technically and financially, is the decarbonising of all our properties. We've also seen as well, through a number of papers presented at both Cabinet and Council, that inflation has had a big impact on the cost of materials, and that again as well makes properties very much more expensive to maintain. So the PAMP then takes account of all these challenges, and it also recognises that with some of the challenges we have, we can't do everything at once. So this PAMP, covering the next 2-year period, is setting out how we want to go about establishing a solid baseline and a solid foundation from which we can make evidence-led decisions on how we want to deal with our properties to make sure that we're in the best position to meet future challenges. The PAMP also outlines a number of elements and some work that's been done over the last 12 months, and on the back of this it sets out an action plan for a number of actions in order to allow us to gather the data over the next 2 years, which will allow us to make the decisions on how we want to deal with, how we want to use, manage, maintain and retain a lot of our assets. The asset management, the action plan to this PAMP has quite a number of actions that there's a lot of detail that will be required to be gathered over the next 2 years. And that will then lead us to providing us with a whole range of information that will allow us to implement a number of solutions across the whole of the estate. In terms of costs, we haven't fully established the costs yet to implement all the measures that we will be implementing all the measures that we will identify over the course of the next 2 years. But it's clear that we will need a sustained capital investment over the long period of time to ensure that we can provide buildings that do meet the needs and the vision, they're fit for purpose, comply with legislation, and that they meet the needs of the customers as well as staff. As such, we will require significant capital to be invested in forthcoming years, which will include a lot of energy decarbonisation work, and that will come out of a number of elements in the action plan that will allow us to develop a range of plans in order to approach the management and maintenance and investment within our buildings. We will, of course, against the financial challenges, look to explore other means of external funding streams, whether it's through Scottish Government or other schemes that are, that help us to deliver on the decarbonisation, in particular, of our buildings. Looking at how we've evolved the PAMP, we've consulted through a whole range of groups within property technical services, estates, I've been involved with its corporate landlord manager and also the wider corporate asset management group. We've also consulted with education and the trust because they'll be key drivers in how we actually take forward the actions. The bulk of our estate relates to education and leisure, and that's a key element for the delivery of the property asset management plan. Also, in recognition of the challenges facing us concerning the climate change agenda and the decarbonisation of our buildings, there's a lack of technical knowledge, and we will look to also engage across other sectors and other professional bodies and other local authorities to establish what they've found as best practice, but also to enhance the in-house team's own knowledge of the kind of technical aspects of the kind of challenges of installing low energy or zero carbon heating as we go through the heating replacement programme. To conclude then, this asset management plan over the next 2 years, it sets out our proposals and framework for how we deal with the management of our council's non-domestic assets, and it builds on the previous work that we've completed over the past 12 months. It shouldn't be underestimated that the management of our assets is a very complex process. There are a number of key elements that all combined, a lot of interdependent decisions that need to be made, and that also includes, the kind of financial situation, net zero situation, the levels of usage in the building which we are looking to establish, and also to ensure that we can meet our customers' changing needs. In summary then, the planned actions over the next 2 years that are set out in the action plan aims to put the council in a very firm position, in the best possible position, to deliver on improved outcomes for not only our staff but the people of East Renfrewshire. And I would recommend that the Cabinet approves this property asset management plan that I've presented this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alistair. Any questions? Councillor Devlin.
It goes into the very fine detail of our assets. Have we ever looked at copying this or mirroring this over the housing revenue account? With land and with properties, the buildings are graded in here, you've got A, B, C and D. I mean, our council stock are never graded, it's just a council house and that's it. I mean, if we could mirror this over the housing revenue account, it'd be much appreciated. It's something we really need to look at. We've got, tenants paying, say, £400 for a property that could be, graded D, and we've got a council tenant paying £300 for a property that's graded A. So it's something we really need to look at.
I'm not sure if this answers your question, but as part of the suite of asset management plans, housing have their own, and they're currently working on that, and that is something that is due to come to Cabinet. So, sorry, does that answer your question?
No. I usually go into the fine detail of our assets. Our assets, because we've got a piece of land here, we've got a piece of land there, we've got a building there and a building there. We've got, 2,200 houses in stock. I mean, the finer detail would allow us to look at our stock to say, well, 200 of the houses are no fit for purpose. Why don't we demolish them and build, new builds, blah, blah, blah. That's the kind of detail I'm looking for.
So that would be considered as part of the housing management plan, and as part of, within that, we will need to do a stock condition survey to inform those investment decisions. And I would assure you that is something that we're currently considering and will come forward in due course through both the housing strategy, which is due to come to the Council in June, and also the housing capital programme report that will come in June. So some of those issues will be touched on in terms of a programme of work that we want to take forward over the next few years.
That's right.
Thanks, Katrina. I think you can. Any other questions on this, Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Leader. I must admit, actually, the thought did occur to me as well, exactly this what Councillor Devlin's just said, so that's great. But I just wanted to comment on, obviously, the proposed approach to property management, I think is appropriate. and I was interested to read, obviously, about property scorecards, and my primary concern was actually about, so you assess each of the properties. Obviously, recently it's been in the news about properties in Glasgow getting to the point where they're actually beyond saving, and I just want to ask if there's any at-risk register or anything like that we have for properties that, where they're actually almost, because I did read that a lot of the maintenance has been reactive, and that's something that's particularly what concerned me, is that, we become aware of something and it's too late, where a property is beyond, and it may have actually been an asset for us that we could have utilised in some way.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. Yes, a part of the action plan, or the key actions that we're taking forward over the next 2 years, is to upgrade the stock condition data that we have on our non-residential or non-domestic properties. At this point in time, we have no properties at risk, but it is acknowledged there is a maintenance backlog. What we're trying to do with the revised approach to how we deal with the buildings is to look at the key elements of the buildings that keep the buildings open, fit for purpose, and compliant with all legislation. I think it's always acknowledged that there is a bit of an issue with funding availability, and part of what we're doing with the collation of the data is to have a more robust view of how we can actually deal with the assets, and part of it is to look at developing a building retention strategy. So through all the data we gather, we will ensure that we have enough information to have an evidence-led base on what buildings are absolutely key for service delivery, and which buildings at some point in time that, through the stock condition survey, might indicate that it would cost too much to update and maintain, and look to better use the rest of the assets that we have across the estate.
Excellent. Yeah, I did. Obviously, I'm eagerly participating over the 12 months. What then can you come back to us with? Because obviously it clearly informs our decision making as well. Very important. So look forward to seeing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on this? Alistair, thanks very much for this report. We really welcome this. As you can tell from the questions, it's very thorough, a great inventory of the assets we have now. And quite illuminating in terms of the energy costs, particularly in the school estates and in our leisure centres as well, which is obviously something that we need to work on. It's completely appropriate that the Council reviews its property assets and determines how they can be used as efficiently as possible for the benefits of the residents of East Wren. And particularly, I know you're looking at multi-use of assets to make sure that we're maximising the benefit for those, and that is important. However, where there are assets which are surplus to requirements and there's no other use, but could be repurposed for social housing or support for homelessness, then we'd really encourage officers to bring those back to Cabinet as soon as possible and get on with it, and not wait for 2 years to come back with those sort of proposals. So basically, message is, it's a lot of good work here. Get on with it and come back with the actions as soon as you can. So thank you very much for that. If there are any other comments on this paper, can we agree the report and recommendations? Thank you very much, Alistair. So moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 5, UK Shared Prosperity Fund 22 to 25. And this is a report by Director of Environment, and it's Michael that will be taking this. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, morning. Thanks, Leader. So the purpose of this report is to homologate the previous verbal approval for additional funding to the Netherley to Stamperland Walkway project, which will be using some underspend from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. The request for additional support, Cabinet will remember that the Netherley to Stamperland Walkway project was originally approved at Cabinet on the 24th of August 2023 for £65,700, with that funding coming from the Scottish Government's Place-Based Investment Programme. Subsequently from that, Neighbourhood Services, who were the project lead, were seeking an additional £28,000 to make up a shortfall in the budget for the project. As there were no funds in the Place-Based Investment Programme to accommodate this request, however, the value of the project to the community was recognised, and support has been identified from underspent monies available within the Shared Prosperity Fund programme under the Communities in Place intervention. Linked to this as well was that as the original project was funded via the Scottish Government's programme, the guidance notes state that the main contract works needed to be signed by the end of March 2024. Unfortunately, it was not possible to seek prior approval from Cabinet for the increased cost and time to meet this deadline. Therefore, this report is being brought to the first available Cabinet meeting since then. As the increased cost was urgently required to ensure the main contract works are to be signed by the end of March 2024, a verbal approval was sought and obtained from Councillors O'Donnell, Devlin and Pragnell at a meeting on the 8th of February 2024. The project itself was initiated by the Netherley and Stamperland Community Council. It was identified as a priority by the group from the Local Action Plan consultation in 2022 for the Clarkson area. In terms of recommendations, it is recommended that Cabinet notes the underspends in the Community in Place intervention, and B, homologates the decision to provide additional funding for the Netherley to Stamperland walkway project.
Thanks very much, Michael. Councillor Pragnell.
Thanks for this report, Michael. I know when I told the community at the meeting in February about the homologation of this, they were very pleased that extra money could be found. So the Community Council were very grateful that extra funds could be found to make the walkway as accessible as possible. I also think this shows the benefits of community councils, really getting involved in the community and asking what do their community want. I know there was original plans to start the work in April. Do we have a start date for the works? And just a heads up, I think you'll have another application because I think the Community Council would like to gradually extend this walkway and do the 3 phases if possible of funding.
Okay, I'll come back to you today in terms of the start date for that. Now, obviously these projects are subject to external funding requests, and Cabinet may be aware in terms of the delay coming from UK Government on the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. So we're hoping that there will be information coming out soon. So that's one option. The other option would be the last round of the place-based investment programme for next year. So happy having discussions with any local community councils moving forward. We'll make direct contact with the guys, and then we can take it from there in terms of developing any future stages.
Any other questions on this, Councillor Anderson?
I'd like to say is actually that make a comment about the fact that this is a great thing because it connects communities, and it answers a problem that people on both sides of that railway have had, and it will actually take people away from cars potentially because of the distance they then have to go around it and to get to. So it's an excellent example of exactly the kind of thing they should be doing. Thanks.
Are there any other comments on this? Michael, I'd like to thank officers' work and flexibility in making this happen, and also like to pay credit to Councillor Pragnell and the Community Council for driving this project through. So thank you very much for that. So if there's no other comments, can we agree the recommendations in this paper? Agreed. Thank you very much. So moving on to item number 6, which is the East Renfrewshire Council Disabled Persons Parking Places On Street Order 2020, Amendment number 2, and this report will be taken by John Marley. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. The purpose of this report is to seek approval of the Cabinet for the making of the confirmation of the East Renfrewshire Council Disabled Persons Parking Places On Street Order 2020, Amendment number 2. Prior to 2009, local authorities had the power to install advisory on-street disabled persons parking places in their area. As these parking places were advisory only, any vehicle could park within them, whether displaying a valid disabled person's blue badge or not. The introduction of the Disabled Persons Parking Places Scotland Act 2009 removed the power of local authorities to designate advisory on-street disabled persons parking places and placed a duty on the authorities to promote proper use of parking places for disabled persons' vehicles. The promotion of a traffic regulation order is required to enable proper enforcement of on-street disabled persons parking place. In order to comply with the 2009 Act, a local authority must identify every on-street disabled persons parking place within its area and start the statutory procedure for making such an order. This process must commence within a period of 12 months from when it is installed. The current disabled persons parking place order making a disabled persons parking place was enforced was made in March 2020. The East Renfrewshire Council Disabled Persons Parking Places On-Street Order 2020 Amendment 2 will supersede the current order and enable proper enforcement of all on-street disabled persons parking places in the council area and the removal of those places which have been identified as being no longer required. Emergency services, local community councils and local members were informed of the proposals and the statutory consultation that subsequently took place. A public notice was also published in the Glasgow Evening Times and the Tell Me Scotland website to inform members of the public of the consultation and the inviting representations or objections. No representations or objections to this proposed order were received during the consultation period.
Thank you very much, John. Open up to questions. Councillor Pragnall.
Do we have an exact timescale for the additional disabled parking bays? Because I know the ones in Clarkston were approved, say, over a year ago, and it have only just been installed, so that's a long time to wait. So do we have any timescale? I appreciate it's due to roads and the availability of officers to put the lines out, but do we have a set timescale?
Yeah, so there's two parts to that. So there's getting the lining and the disabled bay installed on site, and then the other part is the making of the order. So if this is approved today, the making of the order will be in about 6-7 weeks' time. It will be signed and advertised, and the order will come into force, and that means that those bays that are in can then be enforced. But there has been a bit of a delay with the lining and getting bays installed, but we're working on trying to improve in that turnaround.
Councillor Anderson.
I was thinking about those particular bays as well, actually, that Councillor Franklin's mentioned there, John. And actually, the question I was asking about, I realise that those that aren't necessarily domestic, where they are close to a person's property. Are they covered by the same traffic orders, where it's someone who at home needs to be able to park outside their house? Is that different from like the commercial ones, say Clarkston or Giffnock or anywhere else, Barrhead, for example?
So an individual may apply for a disabled person's parking place. It comes through HSCP and they assess it, and if they approve it, it comes to us to from a traffic point of view. We've got a statutory responsibility to get it installed. But they were no different from the public spaces that you would see around shops, etc. Same process, and indeed, if a disabled person's parking bay is installed outside someone's house, for example, anyone displaying a blue badge can park in it, but it tends to be they leave it for the person that's outside whose house it is.
So the question, I suppose, is that who requests the ones in the commercial areas, and how do we, because the shop owners, for example, may request it because they want people to have access to their properties, so who controls or requests or those spaces?
Yeah, I suppose the request could come from anyone. We've had a request from the community council for disabled persons parking bays, and then it's just getting the balance appropriate. Speak to the bidder, the shop owners, etc., and come up with something that's agreeable to all.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, thanks very much, John. And a note in your final comments when you were talking to the report, with no objections or representations on the proposals received during the consultation period. So hopefully that will mean that residents will be content with these proposals. So thank you for that. Any other comments on this? Are we happy to agree the recommendations of this report? Agreed. So thank you very much for that, and that calls us to a close for today's Cabinet meeting. Thank you very much.